This is the story of three boys joining our family. It begins with a friendship. Rose's Wish. After living in Kenya in the early 80s, I led a 6-week trip for high school kids to Kenya. We had a homestay while working on a community project. The students went with their Kenyan families, I went with Rose. We were both young women, teachers with many dreams. Rose wanted a family and to be a wonderful mother. She wanted to travel. The next year, we were again near Rose's school, so she was my homestay. Rose taught Swahili to our group. We caught up on each other's news, but wondered when we would see each other again. The next summer, my husband Kent came along as co-leader on a trip. Our project was near Rose. She and Kent warmed to each other immediately. As a co-leader, Rose's smile eased our way many times. Her smile could melt the hardest heart. After our trip, we were joined by Rose's fiancé. We only had a few days. We were sad, not knowing when our paths would cross. Years passed before we saw Rose again. Many letters and phone calls were exchanged. Rose had her first child, Ronald, and we were all so excited. Her husband taught at university, and Rose taught secondary school. They had a second boy, Jimmy. Finally, Kent and I led another trip to Kenya. Then we headed for Rose's house. It was wonderful to be in Rose's presence again and to meet her little boys, Ronnie, 5, and Jimmy, a toddler. Rose was pregnant with her third child. Rose began having early contractions. We rushed her to the hospital. Success. Rose carried her third to term. They named their son Kent, after my husband. In Kenya again in 1998, with our own son just 5, we were to go to the U.S. Embassy one morning. At the last minute, by divine intervention, or whatever you call it, we decided to get a cup of coffee first. There was a huge explosion. The sky went black. We hid for hours. Later, in a nearby cafe with TV, we watched CNN as they covered the U.S. Embassy bombing just a few blocks away. We took refuge at Rose's house. We needed some papers from our embassy, but there was no embassy. We had to wait. Meanwhile, our children played together, innocent of the trouble. Rose and I watched our boys play and smiled at each other. I cannot explain the peace of that moment with the children happy and safe. Upon returning home, I became ill. I did not get better for years. We kept up with Rose's family through letters and phone calls. Rose's husband became ill and died. Then Rose developed leukemia. She was quite ill. We helped pay for drugs and doctors. We gave Rose startup money for a small chicken business to supplement the family's income and diet. After long conversations with Rose, we put the boys in boarding schools so she did not worry about their daily care. They came home on school breaks. To the amazement of all, Rose kept going. We waited for me to recover enough to make the trip back. We began to despair of seeing each other again. Kent and I promised to look after her boys, and education was her dearest wish for her sons. We promised, we waited. In 2007, Kent had work in South Africa. We weren't sure I was well enough, but we went. We called Rose and made plans to see her. We would be in South Africa first, but we would be there. Once in Kenya, we decided to surprise Rose. We were heading to her home the next day, but a message arrived. Rose passed away just after we went to South Africa. Her sister had been unable to reach us. I was in shock. I could not believe that could be so cruel. We met her sister Felicia at the bus in the morning. She had been both older sister and mother to Rose. They were very close. She told us of Rose's last days. She was rushed to the hospital, but no one believed Rose would die. She had been ill and rallied time and again. Rose asked for paper and pen. She could barely hold the pen. She scratched her will on the back of an envelope. She wanted us to take her boys. Sitting on the bus, looking down at that envelope, we were silent. We had no official custody of the boys. The best we could do was keep them in boarding schools. Because the boys were in school, we could only spend a few hours with them. When we arrived to see Jimmy and Kent, the boys were given leave to visit with us. We introduced them to our son, expressed our love for their mother and for them, and tried to reassure them. Their mother's dearest wish was for them to go to college. She would want them to work hard. Rose and we would be looking out for them. We left in tears. At Ronnie's school, the whole scene was replayed, but he spoke very little. I saw the sorrow of the world in his eyes. We soon left for home with heavy hearts. Felicia cared for the boys during school breaks until she passed away the next year. Today, 6 years since Rose's death, Ronnie studies pre-law in university. James studies tourism in the same town. They live together. Kent is finishing secondary school. He visits on school breaks. They work very hard. Rose would be happy to see how close her boys are. Ronnie takes responsibility for his brothers. He takes care of everything, lets us know how much they need each term and just where that money will go. He budgets carefully and manages with what we can give. With inflation and now college, the cost has gone up. Our son is a college student, so our own expenses have gone up. For the first time, we are unable to provide enough to support our godsons. We are asking you to help us grant Rose's wish. You can share this link, ask help from community groups, and of course, individual donations would be humbly appreciated. As each boy finishes, he will help the younger ones. We hope someday to help others and have them pay it forward.
Malaika nakupenda malaika